Yo guys, JJ here, and before we get into today's video, I need to say a big thank you to everyone because we've just gone over 300 subscribers. And you know, baby steps, but like, 300 subs, that's like 300 people keeping in touch with what I'm doing, and obviously like a massive thanks. It's just, yeah, 300 people watching what I like to do, learning from me, and like obviously I love to see the feedback. Like, it means a lot, so just had to give a little shout out to all of you guys. So big up, big up. Second thing is, today we're going to be doing a Travis Scott tutorial, as you guys have seen by today's title and the thumbnail. But before we get into this, it's going to be a bit of a longer video, but it's going to be worth it. I'm going to be going through a lot of stuff, a lot of effects I've added for this beat. It's a very grand beat in my opinion. I think it would sound dope on Utopia. Bear in mind, this is my take on what I think it would sound like. And without further ado, let's just get into this. So first of all, we got a preset from Analog Lab called the Weeping Pad. Sounds really good. I laid down this very basic pattern. Well, I say basic, but I just repeated this every the 1 to 2 bar and the 5 to 7. And then I took it down, like, I think if I'm not wrong, I think this was down 5 semitones and onto the next. And then just added a bit of variation at the end with these little notes. So this is what the melody sounds like. So for effects, first of all, we got ourselves an EQ cutting off a lot of the lows and mids, a few of the highs, and then the frequency I wasn't a big fan of. Then we got the VHS preset from RC20 doing its thing. And last but not least, a very heavy reverb. And then as for stereo separation, as you guys can see, just 17%, not too much, but again, it just adds a nice little bit of space to the mix. Next up, we got a preset from Piano V2 from American Softened. For the pattern, every 2 bar, I just lay down a single G note, keeping it steady playing throughout the whole thing. And it just adds a little bit of ear candy to the whole melody. I think it just sounds really nice. So this is what the G sounds like. I hope you guys can hear what I'm trying to say about this. Like, it's just a nice little bit of ear candy, adds a bit of tension to it. I don't know why, I just get that atmosphere from it, so I think it sounds hella dope. As for effects, I added an EQ cutting up a lot of the lows and low mids, few of the highs, and the frequency I wasn't a fan of. Then I added a bit of free compression just to keep the note at a nice sounding volume. Then I added a heavy delay. It was on 2 time, keep pitch, always want to do that. Ping pong for ear candy, and that's the level and width. And then lastly, again, a very heavy reverb chain. Then for stereo separation, I put it 58% within the mix, so stereo separated quite widely. Again, it's ear candy, so it's not supposed to be very dominant in the beat. Next up, in the melody, we got ourselves a very nice dark synth bass, and you know how Travis is, and Mike Dean as well in the production. We see you, Mike Dean. I think everyone knows who he is, to be honest. It's called the 2 OSC bass. It's a very nice sounding bass, and I lay down this very basic. If I'm correct, this is following the root notes of the next instrument I'll show, but that's the pattern, and this is what it sounds like. Like, when you hear that, it's so gritty, it's in your face, it's just asserting dominance on the table. Like, this bass will slap you and your family up. Like, that's just how in your face it is. As for effects, I took off a few of the lows, and then a very few of the lows. Like, I'm on about 37 hertz, 30 even. And then a few of the mids and highs. Then to give it that extra little bit of like grittiness, I added a room driver from Decapitator, and then I just switched it over to P, and I think I played with the drive a bit, I could be wrong, but Room Driver 2, great preset. Then, when it came to the root notes, then for the next part of the melody, I got a preset from Mellotron V called April Showers. Very nice sounding preset, if I do say so. And as you can see, this is where I got the root notes from for the bass. But I just repeated this chord progression, and at the end of the 4 bar, I just switched it up a tiny bit. And then I did Control A to highlight it all, then clicked Alt S to add some strum to the whole piano melody. And this is what the piano sounds like. As you can see, it sounds nice, a bit of like a Travis Scott feel again, but I just think it complements the whole beat very well. For effects, I added an EQ, cutting off a lot of the lows and a few of the highs. Then I added this gross beat preset called Basic 10, and I think it just adds a little bit of ear candy again to the whole beat. Then, as you guys can see, I've got Valhalla Vintage Rib on this joint. Then real quick, what I did was I added a panning to the right and then a bit of stereo separation to it. So again, when you hear the whole melody together, you'll hear how all the instruments complement each other real well. It's not too muddy in a mix. Right, next up in the melody, I've got a preset called 51 Funny Cat, and it's an Analog Labs, and this is the pattern I penciled in. However, there was an issue. I've tried to fix it, but I can't. For some reason, the FLP just won't play the volume, so I'm just gonna go through it quite quick. This is the pattern I laid down for it. It's like a lead melody, but it sounds really nice. Unfortunately, again, I don't have the sound, but you will hear it in the end product, I think. So that's the pattern. And then to run through effects quite quick, a basic EQ, a pulse trainer preset on a very low mix from Portal. And then now lastly, within the whole melody, I added this kind of like riser effect, but it's pretty much just a lead, and I'll show you it now. It's a Serum preset from a band called Fuego, the Serum Bank, and it's a lead the 80s. What I did was I just lined it on G, and then every 2 bars I just took it up a bit of an octave, letting it slide up higher, and you guys will hear what it sounds like now. As for effects on this preset, all I did was added the EQ to cut off a lot of the lows and a few of the highs. Then I added a fruity delay 3, put the time on 4, again, keep it on pitch, stereoed it for the delay, and that's all the effects for it. Now, after everything I've just gone through in the melody, bear in mind, and I've said this through a lot of my tutorials, the melody isn't playing all together in one go. As you can see, it's quite spaced out, but it just gives it a lot more character. It gives room for the artist to do his thing. It keeps the artist on his toes, the listeners excited, and this is what the melody sounds like. As you guys can hear, I think this melody sounds dope. It sounds aggressive and dark, and I think this would be a bit of a Utopia vibe. But let's get into the drums. You know what? Today we're going to switch it up a bit. First of all, we're going to be going through the 808s. And as you guys can see, this is the pattern I've laid out. All I really did was follow the root notes, kept a bit of space between them, and then just added a few rolls to the second half of the melody and another like switch up, to put it simply. And of course, Control A, make sure everything's highlighted. Use the scroller wheel to max your velocities. I will never stress that enough. With all that being said, this is what the 808 pattern sounds like. Sounds nice, crisp, you know what we want from the 808 as per usual. As for the hi-hats, what I initially did was I played a simple 2-step with a change of velocity like this. Then that's when I decided to take out a few parts, you know, add a few rolls, a little bit of a longer roll, change up a bit, you know what I mean, that's how we just always do it. So that's the hi-hat pattern, repeats every 4 bars, and this is what it sounds like. Standard. As you guys could hear, I use a very crisp hi-hat because that's what you usually hear of these kind of Travis-ish beat. Again, my interpretation of what a Utopia beat would sound like, but there you go. Next up, we got a very basic clap pattern, but we're using the snare because it's twice as hard on these kind of beats. So this is what the snare pattern sounds like. And there's really no point of me going through the whole 8 bar, so let's just move on. Well, now we're on the kick pattern, and all I really did was copy and paste the 808 pattern onto the kick, and I just kept it all at the C. And of course, you know, the velocities are always maxed, because that's how we do it. And this is what the kick pattern sounds like. Bada bing, bada boom, and that's your kick. Next up, we got literally a simple cymbal that comes in for the hook, and this is what it sounds like. Now next up, I got another open hat pattern, repeats every like, God knows what you want to call this. And this is what the open hat sounds like. I think the open hat in the main beat just gives it a bit more energy when like, let's say you hit like a second part of a hook and you're like, oh, it's open hats, and it's just driving the beat more. So that's why I added it for. Last but not least, I made this little loop pattern, and what I did to make this pattern was I soloed out the drum, snare, and the kick, nothing else, recorded it into an audio file whilst having a halftime on it from Gross Beat. And simply put, that's how I got that pattern. Then very last but not least on the drums, I almost forgot about this. I got a nice little snare roll pattern going with the, again, the same snare that I used for the clap pattern. And this is what the rolls look like. This is what the snare pattern looks like. And yeah, this is what it sounds like.
Let your boom and make it boom.
Now, after hearing all of my nonsense that I have thrown at your way this video, this is what the drum pattern sounds like all together. Hey ho, and that's the drums for you. They're sounding crisp, hard, knocking your eardrums out, and that's how you want to do it. You want to have these drums knocking into another dimension, so never forget that. Obviously now I've shown you the melody, I've shown you the drums, and now you're going to hear it all together at the end of the video. So before we get into that, make sure you guys drop a like, comment, subscribe, you know, show some love, because I'm loving the support I've been getting. I love you guys. Obviously every little help matters, but you know what I mean. I appreciate you guys. So without further ado, you go hit the beat now and take it easy. Peace.